Good evening. My name is Enos Harris, Hearing Officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cerise Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded and your presence and participation are documented as part of that process. This public hearing is being held to consider tree removal requests from 5 property owners. My job as a hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determinations. When the Director's determinations are made, the department will notify you. Please ensure we have correct contact information on file. This hearing will proceed as follows for each case. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. Then I will allow the property owner or appellant to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers. When you hear the first bell, it will mean the speaker has 30 seconds left to speak. A louder second bell will signal when the time is up. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or applicants. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. Members of the public may address the hearing officer on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but are not on today's agenda. We will now begin the hearing, and I'd like to begin with the first case, Order 208479. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Thank you. Good evening. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry, and just want to confirm you can hear my audio okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share screen.
Excuse me, Mr. Buck.
Yes.
Miss Harris, we did need item number 2 for the public comment first before we begin the cases.
Oh, okay. Members of the public may address the hearing officer on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Is there someone that wants to address?
I don't see any hands at this time.
Okay, so may we proceed with hearing order 208479 to consider removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 22 and 24 Sargent Street.
Thank you. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry, and I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint in just a moment. Great. So yes, my name is Chris Buck, and what we'll do for the start of the hearing is just cover some general background before we dive into our first case. Just very briefly and generally, some broad strokes about the Bureau of Urban Forestry and Public Works. And our goal is to ensure safe, clean, and green infrastructure and public rights of way. And BUF's mission is to preserve and grow the urban forest, and also addressing safety needs of a growing and evolving city. Some images before you show that we do both large tree maintenance in the upper left. We ensure that trees are protected during construction, whether that's private or municipal construction activities, tree planting, and again, a scheduled maintenance system, and that all of our public rights of way aren't always just right in a traditional sidewalk setting, but may be along a stairway, and that our code also extends to trees on private property within 10 feet of a public right of way. In 2016, we had a local ballot initiative referred to as Proposition E And the voters strongly supported this ballot initiative, which set aside $19 million in the city's general fund for the city to take on the maintenance responsibility of all street trees within the public right-of-way. Prior to 2016, that maintenance responsibility, 2/3 of property owners maintained trees in the public right-of-way adjacent to their property. And the city, we only maintain 1/3 of the street trees. And this tended to be along the major thoroughfares like Market Street or Geary, 3rd Street from Soma to Bayview, and the Mission all the way down to Daly City. We also have a completed census in 2016. So we now know how many street trees we have, which is about 125,000. And we have a tree maintenance cycle that we're currently working through. So that's a little bit about our overall, how we got here, so to speak. And then we also have a tree ordinance that establishes the authorization and standards for addressing a wide range of issues regarding trees. So our ordinance is known as Article 16 of the Public Works Code. And just broadly, our code requires that a removal permit is required to remove before any street tree can be removed by a property owner. Significant trees in private property and or very special trees known as landmark trees. There were some amendments in February of 2022, some of which we're still implementing. One of them is the delayed replacement tree report. And the other is regarding replacements, in that when Public Works removes a tree, we now shall find a replacement location nearby. Typically what we did is if that immediate site or frontage couldn't be planted, we moved on. And the idea is that we would have a planting plan that plants trees across the city in a better way. Doing it this way as amended isn't necessarily great use of time management, but the code is what the code is. And so we now find replacements, one-off replacements nearby, and that might even be a block away if necessary. So our code always stated whenever a tree is removed that it shall be replaced. But if there are utilities preventing it, we wouldn't replace that immediate location. The idea is to create more of a one-for-one. Whenever a tree is removed, it get replaced. So we'll talk a little bit about that during a few of the cases this evening. And then lastly, another feature in some of the amendments in February of 2022 is looking at replacement street tree value to the one being removed or imposing an in lieu fee. And that's a little bit about that. We have more information about our tree removal criteria. I won't read through all this, but generally the Bureau is trying to advocate for and protect existing healthy street trees. And if a tree is relatively healthy and sustainable at the staff level, and typically at Public Works, the decision is to not remove a tree if it's healthy. There's a climate emergency. There a state of climate emergency signed off on by the city, and a number of important environmental, social, ecological, financial reasons that street trees are a critical component of an urban environment. So we have some guides on how we approach evaluating trees for removal. With that, we'll slip back into this agenda item, which is Public Works Order 208479, the removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 22 and 24 Sargent Street. The subject tree, as we'll see in photos, is an Italian stone pine located at the back of the sidewalk, but within the 14-foot wide public right-of-way. So therefore, it's a tree maintained by Public Works, even though it looks like it may be in like a front yard setback on private property. It's technically still within the right-of-way and the maintenance responsibility of Public Works. The property owner of 24 Sargent applied to remove the tree, and the tree is close to the property line between both properties, so that's why we listed both addresses. So at the staff level, we denied the request from the property owner to remove the tree, and the applicant has appealed. So this is a photo of the subject tree showing an Italian stone pine that's located at the back of the sidewalk, meaning it's not planted in a cutout in the sidewalk towards the curb. It's the back of the sidewalk, and it's at the base of this wall, retaining wall for the property, at the bottom of 22 and 24 Sargent Street. So the pine tree is Italian stone pine, Pinus pinea. It's the conifer or pine that produces pine nuts, if you've ever had pine nuts in a salad. So that's comes all the way from Italy, but they actually do very well in the Bay Area. Also, it's not susceptible to bark beetles or pitch canker disease the way that Monterey pine trees are. So it's considered a pretty desirable species, relatively well behaved. It certainly is in a growing area that's a little confined. We're not going to paint a picture that says this is a perfect condition, but you can see there's power lines, high voltage on the upper left portion of the image. Ideally, we wouldn't have planted such a large tree would not have been planted directly below the power lines. But if you look at this side view, you can see there is space over the hill and the grade for the tree to grow. So that's why this tree and how this tree is filled out in that space. Some of those lines we see, these lower lines, are phone and cable, and those can have contact to the branches. And some of these are also providing power to the house, but no public safety concerns associated with those wires. At the top of this image, you can see that the canopy is getting close to the streetlight. Again, this was not a tree that Public Works planted with forethought, but was probably plopped in there as a little Christmas tree at the end of the Safeway counter one day, and 30 years later, 40 years later, it's lo and behold, it's a pretty big tree blocking the streetlight. Structurally, the tree has two stems. Both stems are about the same size and diameter. That's not ideal structure for a tree because those two stems in wind events react and move around quite a bit. That said, it's a relatively wide angle of attachment, so we do see a pattern of failure in this species with codominant stems and included bark, but this tree is relatively tucked in, not too exposed. It's protected from the taller building behind it to provide some wind protection. And the vigor, I should point out, the appearance of the health of the tree is very good. So there's no issue with like the vigor or health of the canopy, the needles of the tree. But it's really the structure of the tree that may cause the tree to split apart, drop a branch, or have stems separate. This is one of our final photos, just again showing the lower stems of the tree and where they combine. So again, ideally you'd have a single trunk, but this species is known for developing multiple competing or codominant stems low to the ground. It's a species pattern of growth. So in this case, we only have one union to monitor and evaluate. We have a bunch on Miramar Boulevard and other areas of the city where they might have 4 or 5 different unions to monitor. So overall, the tree has good reaction wood, stabilizing both stems. There's no materials from the owner stating that there's property damage at this time. Removing this tree would cause the loss of 100% of the canopy, of course. There's no room to plant replacement tree here because it's too close to the street light. We're requesting that the removal be denied. If and when the tree health declines in the future, at that time, the city is responsible for removing the tree. So overall, we just felt that it wasn't a removal candidate at this time. And one last thing on property damage. If a street tree is if the root system is damaging the sidewalk, we typically would replace that sidewalk and consider it sidewalk repairs like a relatively routine maintenance issue. We don't, however, expect a property owner to suffer damage to the property and say, oh, well, that's kind of routine maintenance. So if there is information about potential or documented damage to the house or the foundation, we definitely want to understand that, because as you can see, the trunk of the tree is close to the base of that wall. Again, if there's no damage, then, to be consistent with how we've handled similar cases, we would typically, at the staff level, at least, deny the request to remove. So that's our case. I know it's probably a lot of information combined with the introductory background, but we won't be repeating that at each of the start of the cases. Thank you. That concludes the staff presentation.
Is the owner available?
Go ahead, Mr. Tweedy, you can speak.
Oh, thank you. Hello, I'm Bill Tweedy, owner and resident of 24 Sargent. And on a separate line, I hope, is Mrs. Rose Snell, my neighbor, owner and resident of 22 Sargent. I understand that you have had access, hearing officer, to our appeal statement and pictures. We think that best captures our argument for removing the stone pine, and the pictures that accompanying it show. I would like to put up one picture to speak from, if I could have access to.
Yes, okay. If you hold on just one moment, it's gonna ask you to become a panelist, and you're gonna reply, and it'll pull you over.
Okay.
Now, once you're over, you'll need to unmute yourself once again, and then you should be able to use your camera and be able to use the share screen feature.
Yeah, can you still,
I can hear you.
okay, good. I'm getting closer. Thank you.
There should be a little green button that says share. Okay,
Okay.
yes. it
This
says-
picture, I think, shows a lot. It does show the double stem stone pine. It shows the utility pole, and I'm going to come to the charring in a minute, and it shows the two strawberries. In summary of our appeal statement, which says it much better, the stone pine we've cared for until the city took it over. And right now it has grown up to blocking the views from our living rooms. About 75% for me, and close to 90% for Miss Snell, who's, you can see this branch of the stone pine that goes towards 22 Sargent. It kind of bends into her house. So it's really, the branches are only a foot away, and we have pictures showing that in our appeal statement. So that's the big thing, is that we should have big views from this location, and the big views that exist, we show in some pictures that accompany our statement. The tree is healthy. It was planted in 1987. Miss Snell was the original owner and cared and watered for that tree. When I moved in 2000, we took joint control. We had several professional pruners come in. We did what we could. The tree has been loved. In 2001, my wife organized a Friends of the Urban Forest planting of trees on our street. and nearby Orizaba. And you can see the 2 strawberries trees that were planted in 2001. And both of those trees, in this view, you can see how much they're affected by the strawberry tree. They're not across the street where there's no competition. They're big, full trees. And in both of our cases, the trees are leaning away, and actually pruning that we did relieved a lot of the
30
pressure.
seconds.
Okay. We agree with what we heard from from Chris Buck, that we're 6'6" from the utility pole. Notice the charring on that pole. That was a car fire. It was a very scary moment for us with this tree coming very close to our houses. And we're 12 and 16 feet from that location to our strawberry trees. We agree that it
That's
doesn't make
fine.
sense to plant another tree in, but if that would help our case, we would do it. So we hope that you will see that it's a personal thing for us. It's not that we don't love trees. We love trees and we love our gardens, but the views and the hazard that this tree presents, and it is glossed over the impact on these utility lines. You just look at all the rubbing that occurs. We had a failure of our power last February, and then PG&E came in immediately after that and cut out the middle of these branches that were impacting the power that was coming to our houses. So we've had issues over the years with that regard. So thank you for your time. We hope that you will agree with us that, hey, this is a great tree. It is healthy, but its time has come, and we would like to enjoy the views that we had 10 years ago. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter? Okay, with no comments for this item, I will close this item. And we'll hear, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think there was another person that he said is going to speak.
Okay.
There was the neighbor, but I don't see her hand. And then there is a member of the public. Oh, yes, there's the hand.
Okay, go
Okay,
ahead.
just a moment. Hello, caller. Can you go ahead and state your name and you can begin speaking, Miss Snell? Miss Snell, are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'm Rose Snell and I live at 22 Sergeant Street. And like Bill said, we have been very caring people of the community. I'm a steward for the garden here on Sergeant Street. We ended up planting up like 15 trees. So we're really, out in our neighborhood, we're very caring people. And this tree is really been beautiful, but right now it's like it's going up to the 4th floor. And I would like to share a picture of what it looks like from my living room, why we were so concerned about this also. So I don't know where to go to share this.
Okay, just a moment. I'm going to promote you to panelists. It's going to invite you to come and you're going to accept the invitation and then you'll come over and be able to share.
Okay.
Okay, now you're here. You'll need to unmute yourself once again. And then you're welcome to put your camera on or not. And then you'll also be able to see a green button that says share screen.
Okay, I'm looking for the green button.
It may be at the top or at the bottom of your screen. If you hover your mouse over it, it should show up.
hold on, let's see. Hmm, Share, boy, hold on a minute. Okay, now I see share screen.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm gonna get to my screen here just a minute.
No problem.
I had this stuff all lined up.
That's okay. We
Where,
will-
okay, let me see if I can find out where, okay. So this is a picture of my living room,
It's not showing yet.
okay. I have it up in front of me, so I don't see, you can't see that?
No, not yet.
Oh, let's see, where did I go wrong here? Oh, okay, let me see if I can go back to. I can see you, and you can't see what I have.
No. Are you sharing something on the computer or you're sharing us with us live yourself?
I
Then
went, I went to my desktop where I have these pictures, and I clicked on the picture to show. And
Okay.
and what I've clicked on here is my living room picture here, and I can't understand why it's not showing. You can't see it.
No, we can't see it yet.
Okay, let me
But
try share. I did, okay, oh, I see. I think I should click on the share. Let me try that again. Okay, yeah, I think this might be able to.
now, yes, we're able to see your screen now.
Okay, let me get this picture back up again. Boy, where'd it go? Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, I'm going to begin your time again, starting now. You have 2 minutes and 37 seconds left.
okay, so like we said, we have like, it's covering more than 75% of my view here. And we have really great views here, looking out over the mountains. We can see the ocean on, most of the times. This is one of the real reasons why we bought this house. Bill and I agree on that. And we talked about how close it is to the windows, and it's blocking sun, and it's blocking the light, and it's making our living rooms look, and the dining room looks really gloomy. And I wanted to show you another picture where it actually is up on the next floor, and what it could really look like, some of the views that we could be getting. Hold on a minute. I haven't had a lot of practice with this. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Maybe I may have to let that go because it may take a little time to find out why it's not. Okay. I apologize.
That's okay. And you're also welcome to send it to us through email.
Okay, you do have all of this, and when we filed it, we also included all that, but I wanted you to see how the views that we could be having in this living room. But I'll just say that this place is usually very windy, and we don't get a lot of sun. I mean, the sun that we do have is being blocked out by the tree. So we're saying that because of this, it's causing us to get limited light and hardly any sun. And we have a problem with fog and a lot of stuff. But we're saying here that the denial of our request to remove the stone pine was accompanied by the comment that we're not a candidate. Well, I'm 75 years old. Bill is 73 years old. The stone pine is healthy. We will not live to see it die naturally. Bill and I are retired, thus we are around the house during the day. Our houses are on a steep slope, so we don't have a problem with our living rooms above the street levels, as far as privacy. And we want to be able to enjoy the views from our living room and in our last decades of our life. As I mentioned, this tree was, we have these trees mentioned. We planted strawberry trees in front of our house in 2001. And we have the strawberry trees have been impacted by this stone pine, and they haven't been able to grow properly. I think this would be helpful if this was removed, and we're willing to remove the tree. In summary, we want to take down the stone pine that is on our property and reclaim the views and direct sun, especially in the winter, and add light that we should be allowed to enjoy. Taking down the stone pine would obviously aid in the health and the growth of the stone pine. It will also eliminate a potential fire hazard and eliminate the impact on the power lines and the utility lines. Not to mention that we have firecrackers going out, and landing in the tree. And I have seen in my neighborhood a firecracker caught a tree and burned it. So it would eliminate all of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. I'm going to change your role back to attendee.
Okay.
Ms. Harris, we do have a member of the public with their hand up. Are you ready for public comment?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Nolte. You should be able to speak.
Yes, good evening or afternoon. First issue is that, we need all the trees we can, that we need, have in San Francisco, and taking out a mature tree like this would not be a net gain. And also it would take years to get the carbon and other things that come from this one tree back into that neighborhood. So it's great that they planted other trees in the neighborhood, but this tree was there first, according to them, and therefore that's again, something they probably, when they bought the house, that was there, or when they planted it. So I think that tree should stay because it should just be trimmed. I think, and that's what's being heard here, is that unfortunately it might be impacting their quality of life in their living rooms, but you have a whole house. They're good. I don't agree. I lived in houses too with views, and the trees do get in the way. So you can't just cut down every tree in your view from your living room just because you want a view. So that's not a reason for a tree to be taken out, or even a public tree to be taken down. So this is a public tree now. I requested it stay up.
Thank you. Is that the last of the comments for this matter?
I don't see any other hands at this time.
Okay, so I will close hearing 208-479. And we will now move on to hearing 208-480 to consider removal of one tree without replacement adjacent to 845 Schrader. Public Works, please make your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, get back to where we were here. So just take a moment for the PowerPoint to catch up with the prompt. So hold on a moment. There we go. Thank you. And this is to consider the removal of one street tree without replacement at the same site, adjacent to 845 Schrader Street. The current planting site is not replantable as it is due to a conflict with the planting guidelines. So the city would locate a replacement site at a nearby location as a required replacement tree. Staff approved the removal and the public has protested. The subject tree is a little hidden behind two taller trees planted in the sidewalk. So the subject tree, the species is Lombardy poplar or Lombard poplar, and the Latin name is Populus nigra italica. And so that's the fancy way of saying it's a Lombardy poplar from the Lombard area of Italy. It's
Ex-
very vertical.
Excuse me, Mr. Buck.
Yes.
There is a notice that's showing on your screen that says give subtitles a try and it's blocking the view.
Thank you. I don't think we want that. I see that. Let's bring this up to. Is
There
that
you
better?
are. Yes, much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, no problem. And is the photo full screen?
No, it's
Like
not.
relatively, or is it showing
It shows
multiple photos?
your what's coming up next on the right side.
Okay, that's confusing. Let me. Well, let's not do that. Hold on, let's get this straightened out. I'll just give this a shot, and if it doesn't straighten out, then I won't spend any more time on it.
Okay.
But I do find that distracting. Can I go like that? No, can I go like this? Okay, well, it's fine to see upcoming slides. I think we can still see the images in enough detail to get the idea across.
Yes.
Okay, so the site itself, it's a corner property, and in this main view, the larger photo, the tree is actually hidden from view, but it's behind that middle tree. And so this is the subject tree. It's the one in the middle in this image. And I'm just pointing out in this red circle, essentially there's a top of the tree that's in really poor condition where the branches are beginning to die back. So the tree health overall is has very poor vigor, not a lot of new growth. And there's decay present within the tree. And there's also been a number of branch failures. So at this point in time, we believe it's a pretty straightforward approval. On this main image, what we're showing is how it is at the back of sidewalk. This tree was planted by the property owner many years ago. We would never plant a tree this large, that close to the front facade of the house. On this screen, what we're showing are the tree's social security number or the tree ID number, the overall height and diameter of the tree, and some of the work we do just to evaluate overall tree health. And so these are inspector's notes that we put onto the PowerPoint. One main branch has died. The overall vigor of the canopy is low. We did receive a concern from the public, so we received likely a service request. And they stated that they felt the tree was in poor condition and they wanted the city to examine the tree. So again, we see some dead branches, thinning or reduced vigor in the canopy, and the public has reported recent branch failures. There's also a canker or wound at the base, and there's evidence of pest activity and decay or rot. The significance of decay or rot within wood of a tree is that sound wood supports the structural weight and integrity of a tree. If too much of the wood decays, there's no strength holding capacity in wood that is rotted, so think of paper mache and things crumbling away. Now, trees can tolerate a good amount of decay before they become unstable. But this species is also documented, the Populus genus is documented as not being good. They don't tolerate decay well, so it's actually considered like a fast wood that decays quicker than other species. Next image just shows the setting of the tree again. And then I just wanted to point out the the tree is planted at the back of sidewalk in this thin little space where typically you'd see plants or flowers. You might see a small stature tree, but maintained at a much smaller size that would never get this large. So we're not going to plant a replacement tree at the back of sidewalk between their stairway wall, retaining wall, and the back of the sidewalk. We would plant the required replacement tree in a different location somewhere in the neighborhood. And I did want to make note that, again, we're working on our delayed replacement tree report. And so we're keeping track of trees that we need to find alternate locations for replacement. We've got that comment placed in this record. It was placed a few months ago, and we're going to keep track of that and plant the required replacement tree nearby. But again, overall, our familiarity with the species, poor health of the tree, this is a relatively straightforward decision and recommendation by staff to remove the tree. The other trees at the site and the public right-of-way would remain, and we'll plant a replacement tree nearby. So that concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Works.
Okay, and Miss Harris, are you ready to hear from the
Yes,
property owners or applicants?
yes,
And
please.
we have a hand here that is Marjorie Beggs. Can you hear me? You're able to unmute yourself?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, okay. Did you need to share a presentation with us, or were you just going to speak?
You can speak.
No presentation.
Okay. Okay, just state your name and then you will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
I'm Richard Beggs and I'm here with my wife Marjorie. We planted these trees, what, 30 years ago?
40 years ago.
40 years ago. And the tree in question does indeed look like it's in trouble. I'm not going to agree 100% with that scathing but not inaccurate assessment by, I forget your name. Anyway. Chris. Okay. And the tree is bifurcated. It has two stems, sort of like the previous tree. And that one of those photos was taken in winter when it was particularly bad. And there is a bad stem. That's for sure. My initial hope was that that bad stem could be removed, and the other stem, there are leaves and stuff, and relatively vigorous growth up at the top now. My hope was that the primary issues could be ameliorated, and that the tree could continue under observation to see how it does. And if it got to the point where it does pose a serious threat, then obviously it should be removed. So I don't know, I'm asking for some sort of, I don't know what it is. It's not a death sentence, but a watchful waiting sort of thing. But I will yield to expertise in this case, of course, but want you to know my position. A lot of it comes from a sentimental attachment, of course, and there's a certain amount of aesthetics involved. So that's about all. Marjorie, do you have
Yeah,
anything?
I would just add that the the tree in question has had an incredibly vigorous growth this summer. The part of it that seems to be fine. In fact, the trees have done better this summer than they've ever done before. Usually they get some kind of rust on them in the summertime and all the leaves fall off, but they've been incredibly vigorous, all of them. There are 2 other poplars on our property. So I think that it's possible to remove the dead part of it and just see how the tree does. It will be a peculiar looking tree, I admit, very long and tall and skinny, but I would like you to consider that as an option.
And it may become obvious during the removal of that large stem that there are things we can't see right now that it'll be obvious that it needs to be terminated. But willing to roll with the punches, but would like a bit of additional consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a comment from the public regarding this matter? Okay, if no further comments for this item, I will close this item. And we will begin the hearing for case 208481 to consider removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 2726 Pine Street location will be replanted if no conflict with below ground utilities. Public Works, please make your presentation.
Thank you. Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And I think I've resolved my screen display here. Let me go from current slide, resume slideshow. And it looks like I have captions below, which will be a new distraction for me to manage, but at least my images are all full screen.
Right.
Thank you. So this is 2726 Pine Street, and it's the removal of one street tree with replacement. The location will be replanted if no conflict with below ground utilities. We don't typically anticipate a conflict with below ground utilities, but we always double check and share that information. Our staff approved the tree for removal and the public protested. So in this image, we're showing the tree from the side view. The species is a Chinese elm, or Ulmus parvifolia. And Pine Street, of course, is a busy thoroughfare, an east-west thoroughfare parallel with bush and pine. The issues that we're seeing with this tree is that it really should be free of this sort of branch tip dieback that we can see in this image. And so the overall condition of the vigor of the tree is poor. There's dieback, meaning the tips of the branches are dying back and thinning, and there's a loss of vigor and overall decline in tree health. Here's an image also taken in April. Now in April, the species citywide are just really starting to leaf out. But we did have actually our inspector, Sarah Stacy, provided these photos for us today. She was in the area and she felt it would be important to show that here's an image taken Friday or August 24th. And there's really no, despite an entire summer of growing season, several months, 4 months of growing, there's really no change in the overall condition, meaning those top sections of the tree that appear dead are in fact dead. And when you have that, it's not just a sign that the branch tips themselves are not doing well. it often is a sign that the root system itself is not faring well. And you could see an entire tree failure, a root failure from that. So it's not just a sign that the canopy, oh, well, look, it doesn't look as good as it should. It's often a sign that stability and tree health below ground is being impacted. So this is a tree. I should have shown a photo of what a healthy Chinese elm tree should look like. But if you can picture Folsom Street in the Mission that runs from the Mission all the way up Bernal Hill, in this just amazing tree-lined oasis that's just green and lush all summer and into the fall, that's what this tree should look like. And so we're looking at this tree, we see a real obvious need to remove it. An additional image is just showing that there actually is a canker disease. It's called anthracnose, where it impacts the live tissue of the tree. It's a fungal infection, which helps cause this decline in the branch tips, which means that parts of the tree that are growing beyond that are going to decline. So we're looking at this tree. We don't see any real recovery, and it's reasonable for us to initiate the removal and replacement of this tree at this time. So to be consistent with how we handle similar cases, this one seemed pretty straightforward. We did want to provide these updated photos from just a few days ago because it was protested. We take that seriously, and we wanted to provide that additional reassurance that we're sure that our recommendation to remove at this point is prudent, and it's just time to get this tree removed and replaced. And that concludes our staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Works. Is the owner or I guess applicant, defendant available? I see a hand raised.
We have Mr. John Nolte,
Okay.
which is, go ahead, you should be able to speak.
Good evening. The correct item for this is item number 5208481 on the agenda, and the address is supposed to be 1462 Lake Street, not what was presented. And that's the agenda that's currently online. So this item is be taken off, and that one should be put in. You cannot be doing switches here. So I would, this item cannot be heard today because it's not on the agenda. And also you took out another item for this. So I would suggest the hearing officer to make the appropriate adjustments, follow Robert's rule of order, and not accept this item as presented by Chris Buck, because it's not the item that was presented and also currently online for the agenda for this this current item. So this is a wrong item, and so this should be disregarded and also reposted at a future date for this item that Chris brought, and that the item for this on the agenda for this item for item number 5 is 1462 Lake Street. If you look at your agenda, and that one should have been heard.
That's incorrect, Mr. Nolte.
That is what's currently on the website, and that's correct. You currently have that on your website. So, and so I don't see why you cannot be changing addresses in the middle of a presentation.
I'm going to look that up, Ms. Harris, and I'll get right back to you.
It's on your website. I have it printed out too. So, you can't do that. Thank you.
Ms. Harris, if I may, this is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry.
Yes.
I just, during the public comment there from Mr. Nolte, I did take a look at the website, and I could share my screen, but it looks like we're, this item Schrader is listed. The next item, Lake Street, is listed as an item, but Schrader is listed as, and Cerise, you could always pull it up as well. But on the website, agenda item 4 is Schrader Street, and then agenda item 5 is Lake Street. Cerise, I don't have Lake Street on in my PowerPoint. But it looks like Golden Gate Ave and then Julian. So I think Lake Street, we weren't planning on hearing that this evening. Cerise, do you know if that sounds familiar? 1462 Lake Street?
Correct. We were not hearing Lake Street on today. I'm looking up the information myself.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for us to pull up the Public Works agenda on the website, because Mr. Nolte is correct in that we want to make sure that any item heard this evening is properly noticed on the website on the hearing announcement. And I do see Sargent on there and then Schrader. So I believe if it's a matter of whether we're calling an item 4 and item 5, that could be clarified. But I do believe that we would not be hearing item 5 this evening. 1462 Lake, we have no plan on hearing it, and I think it got added but not taken off. So we will not hear Lake Street today, if that helps address Mr. Nolte's comment.
Yeah, I believe oh, can you hear me? I thought
Yeah,
I
we can hear
muted
you.
myself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, on the website, you're right. I could show you my screen. Are you able to see that, Miss Harris, or do I need to share my screen?
No, can you share your screen, please?
Okay. Okay. Are you able to see it now?
I do.
Okay. So what he's referring to here is item 4 would be 845 Schrader Street, and which is order number 208480. But then
Okay,
on the next one, which is number 5, it shows as 1462 Lake
got it.
Street,
Okay,
which we were not going to be using tonight. I don't know what happened that they got that mixed up with.
okay.
That should be Pine Street. But
So-
I
but-
recommend we follow the agenda from the website, so that there's no questions of
I
the
understand.
agenda that we're following.
Okay, so then order 481, we're just gonna take off of this one.
Correct. We will
Got it.
not hear that. I think you
Okay.
should still call it. Our current one is Schrader Street, but after Schrader,
Then we're going to Golden Gates.
we would call number 5, but just explain that we had intended to strike that from the agenda, and aren't planning on hearing that. And I think what happened is that we then notified people of the 5 cases we were hearing, and what Mr. Nolte is saying is, Lake, you've never even notified me of Lake. So it got added by accident. The Lake Street item got added by accident.
Okay. So, so then, for hearing order 208481, we will not hear that one today. That one has been removed from tonight's hearing. The next hearing that we will hear is it's 208482. To consider removal of 4 street trees with replacement adjacent to 2201 Golden Gate Avenue. Okay, and Public Works, you may present your case.
Great, thank you. And thank you for that comment, so we could correct ourselves. And let me bring back the PowerPoint. And that had concluded the public comment, right, on Schrader, and we were moving on to the next item.
I was just going to say there was a hand that just disappeared. It was for Liz Miles. I'm not sure if we could find out who they were here for. Can we allow them to talk, Miss Harris?
Yes, I thought that we concluded Schrader, did we not?
I,
We
it
concluded
could be
Schrader
that, it could
because
be that Mr.
what?
Nolte brought up the concern that he had about the order of the agenda item.
Right, so that was brought up at the end of the presentation of the Public Works presentation for Pine Street. So then we removed that one because it was no longer on, because it was a mistake in the agenda. And so we're back on track now for Golden Gate.
Okay. Thank you. And it's just, I state this at the beginning of each case in case someone's listening to the audio or video at a later date. So this is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And I'm gonna, Cerise, you have the PowerPoint up in front of you? Does it, just make sure it's
We
visible to you?
can see, we see your screen, but it's it's not a PowerPoint.
Okay, here we go.
Yes, now we see.
Okay,
That's 2726 Pine Street showing.
yes,
Okay, there we go.
great, okay. A little confusing, sorry about my difficulties tonight. So this next item is order number 208482. And it's regarding 2335 Golden Gate Avenue to consider the removal of 4 street trees with replacement adjacent to 2201 Golden Gate Avenue. There's
Excuse me, Chris, I'm sorry. I have 2201 Golden Gate.
Exactly. I was just about to say that the reason we have multiple addresses here is it's a large property.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So yeah,
Continue.
no worries. So we have a legal address of 2201 Golden Gate Avenue. This is University of San Francisco, but it's a really long block. And the trees themselves are across the street from 2316 Golden Gate Avenue. So it's a large property and we have plenty of photos, but we just, for legal purposes, you know, associate a permit with the legal property mailing address. But then we also, for someone who's just out in the community and isn't looking up parcel maps and legal addresses, kind of speaking a language that they can relate to. So in this particular case, permit application 793181 is regarding the subject trees are at the back of the sidewalk in front of the Hayes Healy underground garage, which is directly across the street from 2316 Golden Gate Avenue. Staff approved the removal of 1 tree and the public protested. Staff denied the removal of 3 trees and the applicant appealed. Here's an aerial photo of the site, again, just to help folks see. It's across the street from these 2 side streets, these 2 terrace streets. So the subject trees are similar to Monterey cypress, but they're a little different. They're known as Leland or Leyland cypress trees. And again, technically the trees are within the public right of way, but at the back of the sidewalk, which we seem to have a number of these this evening, it keeps people on their toes. The only way we know this is to look the trees up, look up the width of the public right of way, and physically truth that out on in the sidewalk. And so the right of way is 12 feet in this particular case. The applicant has submitted an arborist report from a structural engineer as well. They applied to remove 4 trees because of property damage to the adjacent retaining wall and lack of suitable space for the trees to continue to grow and thrive with limited soil volume. The size range of the trees is from 35 to 40 feet in height. The trunk diameter, about 4.5 feet above ground, or DBH, is the ranges from 12 inches up to 25. Overall condition of the trees is fair in terms of the vigor of the canopy growth. There is some dieback and thinning and overall reduced vigor in some of the trees. On a moment, I'm just trying to advance my cursor. There we go. So we typically look at each of the individual 4 trees, referring to this as site 19 or tree 19. And then the report submitted by the applicant is tree tag 1299. And we're going to go through a number of different photos just so we can get a view of the trees. This is a good image because it shows the subject trees from the side, showing the proximity of this wall and garage to where the trees are located. The trees on the far right, we typically number our trees in our tree database with a flow of traffic on that side of the street, so that if you were the tree crew in a truck going down a road, you would encounter the trees the way they're listed in the tree database. Very low tech, but that's why we list them with the way that we do. So this is referred to as tree number 16. And this tree is in fair condition, has a mostly upright form, a little bit of dieback or thinning in the canopy. And the tree has been routinely managed and cared for by University of San Francisco. Our staff recommendation is that this tree, the tree on the far right, be preserved until the condition were to change. So we're essentially saying allow this tree to remain. Here's another view of the same tree we're just talking about. The next tree is tree 17. This is the one that is physically contacting and damaging the retaining wall. So it's second in the row of 4 trees. There is damage to the retaining wall. We agree with the engineer's recommendation of removal. It would be approval of removal of the tree consistent with other cases where a tree is damaging property. The overall condition of the tree is fair. I do want to point out that it's a cypress tree, and Monterey cypress trees, which are more typical in the Bay Area, have a much more dense appearance to them. So Leland cypress do tend to be a little bit sparser and thinner. Yet these are a little bit, I would say they're on the fair side of vigor, but that's why they're not as full as you'd see with a Monterey cypress. The third tree we're looking at this evening is shown here. This tree has space from the retaining wall, so at this point in time, our recommendation would be to deny the request to remove this tree. Again, it does have some reduced vigor. Overall condition is fair. And then the 4th tree in the row. Oh, one other thing to note, we do acknowledge that one of the trees that we're recommending preserving does have codominant stems with included bark in this one location noted with the red arrow. So we do acknowledge that, you know, that's an area within this tree that has the potential to fail more so than if it didn't have this competing stem. So we acknowledge that it doesn't have ideal structure, but at this point in time, still feel comfortable having it retained in the right of way. And then the last tree to review is the one on the far left that has a single stem. Again, not a very large tree. This is the one that has a 12-inch diameter. It's a little bit smaller at this point in time. No major deficiencies or concerns. The overall condition is fair. Just showing another image of that. So we often, when we receive reports, try to kind of summarize some of what's contained in a report and then provide a staff comment. So this image is just showing that the arborist report concerns. We agree with many of their findings, that some of these trees have open sparse canopy, but there aren't necessarily hazardous concerns. So we're agreeing with their overall findings. And then the engineer's report recommended one tree be removed of the 4, and we do agree that one of the 4 trees should be removed at this time. And our staff who prepared the PowerPoint noted that the applicant has not shared or expressed that there's major construction planned to the garage structure that requires tree to be removed. So if we have that incorrectly, of course, we will be corrected this evening. But if that was the plan, if there was going to be major construction or repairs or excavation that had the potential to impact the root system of the tree, that would be additional information for us to explore. But overall, we had the request to remove 4 trees, and we felt that at this point in time, it was reasonable to approve 1 tree and deny 3. So the applicant, USF, said, okay, well, we want to remove all 4. So they appealed that staff denial of the 3. And then the 1 tree we did approve was protested by the public. So what that means is that this evening, we're essentially considering all 4 trees. And I do want to say that USF manages a lot of trees on their property. Some are also in the right of way. Just in general, it's a large, cultural institution in the city. We have a very good track record with working with USF, and I'm not trying to lead the jury here. It's not a jury, but they've done a good job maintaining their trees. They often win awards for the type of work they do with their campus. That said, to be consistent with how we handle similar cases, we look at the trees themselves, not necessarily the history. But we do have a good relationship with USF. We appreciate the care they demonstrate in managing their trees. This particular one, we just happen to be not quite on the same level with. But I think that concludes our presentation for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Works. Is the appellant, our owner available? I'm ready to hear from the appellant.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. And first of all, I was the one that was raising my hand on the Pine Street thing, and my apologies. I was kind of jumping the gun on this item. So my name is Liz Miles. I represent the University of San Francisco. And thank you for this opportunity to meet with you this afternoon. I just want to clear up some housekeeping things, if I can get some guidance. I have with me to help me talk about this, Andrew Sullivan, landscape architect from Page, and Zachary Voigt from Urban Forestry Associates. And if possible, I would like to give a few introductory comments for context, and then pass the torch to them to get into the technicalities. And so Ms. Wader, if you can guide me or us on how to tag team on that, I'd be grateful.
Okay, each person is allotted 3 minutes to speak, so you can have your statement first, and then once you're done, then they raise
just
their
step in.
hand, and then I will choose them once I see their hands raised. And if
Okay,
they have anything to share, I'll promote to a panelist at that time.
great, thank you.
Okay,
Can I share the screen?
yes, just a moment. I'll promote you to panelist. It'll ask you to, you'll need to unmute yourself again, and then I see you have 2 minutes and 23 seconds left. So
Okay,
just a moment.
if I do that, sorry, a question.
I'm sorry, it was already in motion.
Oh, sorry,
Uh,
okay.
it's
Join us.
Just, yeah. Okay, it shows you went over. Just unmute yourself again. There you go.
All right, all right,
Yes.
I'll get rid of my me and, all right. All right.
Okay,
So,
great.
thank you. For some context, University of San Francisco is located just north of the Golden Gate Park Panhandle, and as Chris pointed out, we have the campus is about 52 acres, and we have 2 or 3 large parcels, and the part of the lower campus in the red circle is the part of the project that we are interested in talking about today. We are constructing a basketball pavilion in that red circle, kind of sort of the blue square. This is a 15,000 square foot building that's notably about 85 feet set back from the right of way. And it is over a parking structure, although in this project, we aren't constructing anything within the parking structure. The building is on stilts over the parking structure. We want to landscape part of the parking deck from the right of way back into overlapping what used to be the parking deck. And so we have in our plans a significant landscaping plan for that part of the frontage. And it is our hope that we can replace the Leland cypresses, which we don't think are particularly thriving, with more appropriate trees for that location. Zach and Andrew can speak to that. One thing I do want to reiterate that Mr. Buck kindly pointed out is that USF does have a pretty significant urban forest. We have, I think, over 1,200 trees on the campus overall. We devote significant time and resources to maintain that urban forest. I think it's the largest urban forest in San Francisco, and we take it very seriously, not just for its innate beauty and
That's your time. Sorry.
Okay. Then I will pass this on to Andrew Sullivan, our landscape architect at Page. Who hopefully is here. Okay.
Mr. Sullivan, did you need to be promoted to panelist as well, or you just wanted to be able to speak?
If you could promote me to panelist, that would be helpful.
Okay. You'll need to unmute yourself once again.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Um,
And yes, we can see your screen. Thank you. Okay.
I'm trying to mute myself on screen.
Okay, and you will have, you did mute yourself again. You'll need to unmute once again. We were able to see your screen. That was fine. Mr. Sullivan, you will need to unmute yourself once again.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And then just click the green screen share screen button. There you go.
Are we there now?
Yes, it's perfect. Okay, you will have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. So just to pick up, I guess, where Liz left off. So it's a pretty significant new construction project on the existing parking deck and underground parking structure. I think, as you know, excluding the Presidio, I think, as Liz mentioned, they manage one of the largest urban forests in the city. This is just a quick elevation plan showing the existing conditions above and the proposed conditions below. You can see in the lower scheme, there's again a pretty significant multi-story building that's being constructed atop the existing parking structure. The existing parking structure, just so you're clear, there's basically a parapet wall at the leading edge of the existing garage, which we are proposing to remove to the extent feasible. And as you can see from the little sections here, the intent is to, in that section of deck, lower the wall and then create basically lose a handful of parking spaces at the leading edge of the deck, and then landscape the front of it. And again, it's a way to kind of soften that front public image. I know this is probably outside of Chris Buck's consideration or the buffs generally, but part of the intent was to have kind of a unified landscape, and we're looking at this both from the campus perspective as well as the kind of future full streetscape perspective as part of the master plan thinking behind the whole campus. So there's, I think, a bigger kind of picture and campus-wide proposal as how we're kind of thinking and dealing with this. I'm going to be running out of time here quickly, so I will try and scoot through this. These are just an aerial of our that we were using. One thing I will add is that, you know, from our point of view, and I think I'm hoping our arborist will speak as well, but we were considering that, you know, I would have put these more on the other side of fair to poor, just looking at the kind of, you know, the branching habits and some of the other kind of issues that Chris had mentioned with, you know, co-dominant leaders and or low branching, low kind of crotch on the trees in some locations. I think there's also a long-term concern. It's not
30
about construction
seconds.
access. Thank you. But there is a concern, you know, I think the reason this was an approved tree is for potential future damage to both the underground structure as well as the existing top of above grade structure, as well as, you know, some potential, you know, imminent damage. I think the intent was to hopefully replace these with also a tree that's on much more scale appropriate given the conditions, the existing conditions that we've got here. I think I might be out of time, but hopefully I can pass this back to our arborist to weigh in. Oh, and if I've got 2 more minutes, I was going to say, if maybe the arborist can talk to the fact that we were going to propose additional replanting. So instead of a 1-to-1, we would propose a 3-to-1, and we would find other locations, maybe with actually a Monterey cypress on campus, where we could get a much more at a much more appropriate scale and setting for a tree of this size. Something much more appropriate, I think, than than the constrained conditions with a huge existing utilities and below grade parking structure adjacent. So for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. If we have the other participants with their hand raised, let's see. Is it Zach Vogt? Is that the right person?
Hi, this is Zach, the arborist.
Okay. Okay, and did you need to be promoted to panelist to Sure, or
No,
just
I
to
should be
speak?
able to convey what I need just verbally.
Okay, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, so we've been working with USF since 2018. We updated their tree inventory then, and then did another update in 22. So we've had, a good bit of exposure to their urban forest and the species that they have and how they're doing. In this location, the Leland cypress, it's a tree with a relatively large growth potential. Uh, you know, so when you're looking at a appropriate tree for a sidewalk planting, you really need to look long and hard at the, height if there's above ground obstructions, and then also the planter size, because a big tree is going to want a lot more soil volume to really achieve its full size and thrive in that location. And Leland cypress has done quite well. It likes the coastal setting of San Francisco. In this setup, it's a pretty confined planter, so I would expect there to be conflicts in the future. So that's one of the reasons why the college is wanting to hit the reset button and plant something a little more appropriate for that site. And also, like Andrew mentioned, the college is more than willing to plant additional trees. They've got a lot of open areas on the campuses where they could plant a cypress that's going to get big and actually be able to provide the full benefits that species can provide given the correct location. And one of the things I wanted to mention as well is we've seen a lot of decline of Leland cypress given the persisting drought. It's a tree that hasn't performed well, and they've had to take a number of them out. And these sort of look like they're on that path. Of course, they're not dying, but they aren't thriving in this location. So I'm in favor of picking another tree that is going to do well and look good there, and not conflict with any of the infrastructure in the future. So I think that wraps up my part.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Yeah, I thought I saw 2 other hands raised. Is that for this case?
The other hand is a member of the public.
Okay, a member, comment from the member of the public, please. Go ahead.
Mr. Buck had his hand raised.
Oh,
Thank you. I just wanted to double check in the presentation, kind of clarifying if we could before public comment, because it could be beneficial. I'm understanding correctly that there may be limited soil volume. So I'm trying to get an understanding, perhaps the applicant could just clarify if that retaining wall and below ground, like parking structure, how much of all of this existing infrastructure directly behind those 4 trees, how much of that's going to change? I'd be curious to know if, like, is there an 8-foot below ground or 10-foot from where this wall, this fence or wall is? Does that go straight down like 10 feet, 15 feet? So I heard something that wasn't clear to me in our staff presentation, where our staff stated, hey, it doesn't look like there's any structural issues with this site, yet I've heard some things this evening where talking about limited soil volume and perhaps like a tree protection issue, like not being able to work around the trees if this site is going to change. So I just trying to a quick clarification, probably quicker than this comment, about what's going to happen right directly behind those trees. And that just might help when when the hearing officer works with the director to formulate a decision, just to be able to clarify that, and the decision will be helpful. Thanks.
This is Liz Miles. The garage, the underground garage is a circular garage that goes down 4 floors, basically. So it's and from the planter straight down, there's the retaining wall, and it does go down probably 10 or 12 feet below grade. The depth of the planter, I would defer to Zach or Andrew if they know that detail, but there is the planter is limited to its depth to some extent. We have no plans to construct anything in the garage, although we, as Andrew cited, we would remove part of that above grade wall for the landscaping project. Does that help answer the question? Okay.
Thank you. That does help. I just wanted to make sure we had a clear understanding of Public Works in case I was asked any follow-up questions. Thank you.
Are those all the presenters for this case? Okay, is there any public comment for this
Mr.
case?
Zach had.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify my comment related to soil volume, which was more about just allowing the tree to achieve its full potential, which I think it probably can't here, just given the infrastructure constraints, whereas the college has a number of open soil areas where those trees just can spread their roots as far as they want and provide more benefits as a part of the urban forest.
Okay, thank you very much. Does that conclude the presentation from the owners? Is there any public comment on this matter? I see a hand raised.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Bowler. You should be able to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Is that it?
Yes, that's it. We can hear you.
Thank you. I just want to say that I've gotten to the point of thinking about trees as living beings. And so this discussion is very difficult because they're not furniture to be moved around at the convenience of people designing buildings. And I would request that not just these architects, but all be in this city where we need all the trees we have, take to designing their buildings so as to not harm the trees. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Ms. Bowler. And we have also Mr. John Nolte. Go ahead.
Good evening. Couple of things. First, it was stated that there's really no issue with the trees except for one, and therefore they should stay because you're just removing a retaining wall that's already been there, and those trees are thriving, so therefore they're okay. They're in fair condition, as pointed out by Mr. Buck. So then the next issue would be that since we're dealing with a 1,200 or plus trees that USF has, and if they're willing to plant at other places on their property, that's fine. But they're mixing apples and oranges here because unfortunately we're dealing with trees that are right now that are considered significant trees and in the public right of way. So therefore, putting them somewhere else on the property, well, that really has no jurisdiction over that. But if for the one tree that there may be questionable of removing, then I will want in writing the 3-to-1 ratio for that tree. Otherwise, the other 4 should stay because I did see there was no conflict with the garage as planned and or as going forward. So, so the 4 trees should stay, 1 tree be removed, and 3 trees for replacement for that 1 tree. And I would suggest that be in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. I don't see any other hands, Miss Harris. I don't see any other hands.
Okay, thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I will close this item and we will move to hearing order 2084H3 to consider removal of 1 significant tree with replacement on private property and removal of 1 street tree with replacement at 56 Julian Avenue. Public Works, may I have your presentation?
Thank you. Good evening. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And I'm gonna wait a moment for my PowerPoint to catch up with my prompts. I also understand that our clerk's computer is gonna restart, but we're co-hosting. So I don't think we'll experience a delay in that. Okay, so let me bring this presentation to the correct item. Let's see. Cerise, can you see if the Julian Avenue item is before us? Slideshow from current slide. I believe we should be okay. Thank you. We should have before us like the title sheet for 56 and 80 Julian Avenue. And Cerise's computer is getting restarted, but she says we're in good shape. So thank you everyone for waiting who's still with us this evening. We've moved on to our final agenda item, and we have, just to restate it, this is Public Works Order 208483. This is regarding 2 permits, 56 Julian Avenue, permit 794240, and 80 Julian Avenue, permit 794239. There are 2 parcels of property. We require individual or separate permits be submitted per property, which we've required the property owner to do so. And this site overall, this is my description that I pulled off of the website. And so if I've not included everyone involved, that's my mistake and not the mistake of the applicant. But the site is known as the Village, and also the Friendship House, project leader in partnership with the American Indian Cultural Center, AICC, and American Indian Cultural District, AICD. Staff approved the removals and the public has protested. So this is an image of one of the trees that Public Works approved for removal. It's a significant tree, meaning the tree is on private property, but it's within 10 feet of a public right of way, and it satisfies the size criteria to be considered a significant tree. And those size criteria, it just needs to satisfy any single one of them. But it's a trunk 12 inches or greater, in excess of 12 inches, canopy spread of 15 feet or greater, and canopy height. And the canopy spread, though it's a little sparse, is 15 feet or greater. And so it's considered a significant tree, which means Public Works has permitting jurisdiction over it as if it were a street tree. And the idea with significant trees is that they are close to the public right of way, so they're benefiting the overall public right of way and the experience and environment of a public right of way. This tree, I can state very clearly, has severe issues. It's probably greater than 80% canopy dieback. It has arbutus canker. Canker is a dieback of bark tissue. There's cracks in the main trunk. So this tree was an easy decision to approve for removal. The next tree we're also going to be considering this evening is a ginkgo tree. It's still relatively small. It is in the public right of way. The trunk diameter is 5 inches at about 4.5 feet above grade. There is a, we don't have a close-up of it. We do in our tree database, but there's a wound at the formation where these two stems originate, and there's poor wound closure. It is a large stature tree placed underneath high voltage power lines. So a little bit of a missed, ideally we don't plant large stature trees beneath high voltage power lines. So the proposal from the applicant is to replace it with a native tree that is appropriate for placement beneath the power lines. So because of that, and because of the tree's relatively small size, at the staff level, we're willing to approve that for removal. The next tree is another ginkgo tree. This one doesn't have really the structural issues that we saw with the previous tree. Overall condition is fair. Again, I'm at a staff level conflicted about this, because typically if a tree is relatively healthy and sustainable, our decision is not to recommend removal. So we really need to hear from the applicant a compelling reason to remove it. That said, at the staff level, again, it's a tall and large stature tree at maturity, planted directly beneath power lines. So what we're saying is, you know what, that was a mistake. A replacement tree that's going to be a low stature, small, and not as big is more appropriate for placing within power lines. So that's why at the staff level, we did approve this for removal. I do think we should triple check and make sure that a landscape appraisal for this tree, a 5-inch diameter tree, doesn't go over the basic in lieu fee. Otherwise, we would assess the appraised value of the tree. The next tree that's part of these two applications is an elderberry tree. It's a native tree to the Bay Area, and it may not look like much, but this is how this species grows. It grows with multiple stems in a clump like this, not typically seen as a street tree. This is a significant tree, again, within 10 feet of the public right of way, just behind the wall. So it is a bit of a rare species for sure in an urban environment. The proposal is to replace it. This would be removed and replaced from the applicant's perspective due to a changing use of this particular part of the site of what we would call programming. I do want to say that in preparation for the hearing, I intended to pull the staff appraisal just to see what the appraised value of this tree is for removal. And I think that's something that I'm going to have to follow up in the next day or two with both the hearing officer and the applicant to share what that appraised value is of the small ginkgo and of the elderberry, just so that we can include that within the resulting decision. But I don't have the appraised value with me this evening. One of the last trees here we're considering is the liquid amber, which is the common name is sweet gum. And it's a large stature tree placed in the sidewalk. It's directly beneath high voltage power lines. We have photos in the tree database that show a rather poor structure for a large stature tree. So because of the conflict with the power lines, we're allowing or approving the tree to be removed and replaced. Again, I'm going to triple check and make sure that the appraised value, if it's greater than an in lieu fee, that we make sure that due to development that we're capturing any loss of appraised value. So that's the one asterisk here I would say with our staff presentation is we just want to confirm that in the next few days. We would follow up with that information and provide that to you, the hearing officer, and to the applicant as well. But overall, they have a planting plan. We've met closely with the applicant. They've presented plans to us in far greater detail than what I'm showing, but for brevity, I'm not going to go through all the slides, but they have a lot of detailed plans detailing everything that's going on with both sites. And they'll be the ones to really make their case for removal with replacement. Regarding a replacement tree plan, we do have one, planting a number of street trees and future potential significant trees. And this shows some of the palette. The tree on the left, I just want to point out for clarification, is not the size of the tree that can be planted, but it's the size of the tree that the arbutus, the native madrone, has the potential to grow to. It's a bit of an experiment because they don't tend to grow that well in San Francisco, but that would be the goal of the replacement tree plan. So with that, we did approve these trees for removal. We understand the project has gone through a lot of community and planning approvals. And so at this point, we would turn over, we'd now turn to the applicant and hear their feedback before public comment. Thank you.
Okay, we have a hand raised for Micah Press. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Could you also promote Liz Einweiler? She's going to also be presenting and she has a deck to share. I'll speak
Okay.
first and then Liz will follow.
Okay, I will. Okay, so you're going to use your time to speak only, and then I will turn it over to her afterwards.
Is she able to put the presentation up first
Let me see. Just a
while I
moment.
speak? You could
Oh.
promote both of us.
Oh, okay. Let me see. She's going over. Go ahead and unmute yourself once you come over.
I will make this a presentation and then Micah can speak and I will speak next. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Great,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Micah Press and I'm speaking on behalf of the project sponsor, Friendship House. Friendship House is an Indigenous-led nonprofit social service organization that has been providing support to American Indians for more than 50 years. As the oldest American Indian-run organization in the United States, Friendship House has a unique approach to wellness and substance abuse treatment that integrates traditional Native healing methods with evidence-based practices. With a focus on cultural and spiritual connection, Friendship House has helped over 5,800 clients recover from substance abuse through its CARF certified programs. Friendship House is leading a coalition of Native-led nonprofits to build the Village SF Wellness Center at 80 Julian, which will be a 6-story, 43,000 square foot building, allowing for a program expansion that will help meet the health, wellness, cultural, and spiritual needs of the over 9,000 American Indians in the San Francisco community. The new building will be a place for Native peoples where they may prosper, connect with culture, and be part of a supportive community. The Village Wellness Center will be constructed adjacent to the existing Friendship House building at 56 Julian, sharing a courtyard, which will serve as a gathering and ceremonial space. Liz, you can go to the next slide, please. The 6-story building will include a cultural and elders hall, a youth center, dental and medical clinics run by Native American Health Center, 2 floors of interim supportive housing, and a rooftop garden and farm where food for the programs will be grown. Next slide. Construction of the building and installation of the upgraded courtyard requires the removal of the existing trees to allow for installation of site utilities and construction logistics. Trees 8 and 11 on the bottom left side of the screen are required to be removed to allow for installation of site utilities and construction logistics. The building is a full lot size building, so it comes all the way out to the property line, necessitating the removal of tree 8. So tree 8 need to be removed for PG&E, for a new in-ground PG&E transformer vault to power the building, and for new water and sewer connections at the front of the property. To construct the building, a mobile crane is required to be located in the courtyard. Tree 12 needs to be removed to provide room for the crane and materials to drive onto the site, shown there in red, the crane installation route. Tree 12 is directly in
30 seconds.
of the route. And finally, tree 13 needs to be removed to allow for a new ADA loading zone and curb ramp per DPW standards. And finally, tree 14 needs to be removed to allow for the relocation of the existing 56 Julian pad mountain PG&E transformer. Due to the small frontage of the building, we are extremely constrained with what we can fit on the sidewalk during construction, but the project is committed to installing new trees on the street and many more in the courtyards, as the project's landscape architect, Liz from Einweiler Kiel, will describe. I'll turn it over to Liz now to describe the replacement planting plan.
Thanks, Micah. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Einmiller with Einmiller Kiel. We're the landscape architects and are honored to be working on this job. This graphic illustrates for you the amount of landscape that is getting put back. The first thing that I'll speak to are the street trees. As you heard, for the entire project, we have 3 significant street trees that are being removed. You can see that we're replacing those 3 trees and another. So there will be 4 new street trees on the frontage. We also have these, we're calling them these 2 entry trees. These are the replacement trees for the 2 significant trees that are being removed that Chris described earlier. And then in general, what this shows you is the Friendship House will be renovating the entire courtyard, and the 80 Julian Village project will have a roof garden. So in total, we are bringing 32 new trees to the project site. The client, the overall project design places a strong emphasis on plants. The client, it's very important to them that people that use the space feel like they're connected to nature. It's also, plants are important for their significance in Indigenous cultural practices and to provide a space of retreat and healing. So we're trying to create this urban dense forest within the courtyard. In addition to using culturally significant species, we're also proposing tree and plant species based on their contribution to the ecosystem by focusing on species that are native to the area, drought tolerant, and support native pollinators. Overall, we recognize this is a very special project as a place for healing and well-being. So our goal is to create a landscape that will grow and thrive well into the future. So also part of that is to note that, as was also mentioned, our street trees will be compliant with PG&E overhead wires and fire access. So they really, because of their smaller stature, they'll be able to grow and thrive in the long run. Thank you for your time. I'll end on a pretty picture.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any comments from the public? Okay, I see a hand raised.
We have Mr. Nolte. Go ahead.
Good evening. Yes, so this has been a long hearing, but it's interesting to see a plan with new trees being put into it, and for a healing process for the people that are going to be using the site. My issue is with the neighborhood and the already taken out trees that within that block radius by DPW. We're really not having a gain here. So I would question the really within a block radius, the trees that are already been taken out from the storms, other developments, that other developments in the immediate area that are being developed, and that are not planted yet, and or were taken out because of proposed developments. This is becoming a very more dense neighborhood because of the proposals within the block radius of this project, and also what going on across the street, the club that's across the street. It's going to affect, and you having a open courtyard like that, I don't know how you can protect it in the middle of the night, and also with the youth and whatever that go into that neighborhood. So, and also the homeless. So I would be very concerned about what's being planned here, and what safeguards do we have for the community if this plan goes forward, and how you're going to protect the community and your property from future vandalism by the neighborhood if you do not think about that in your plan, because I didn't see any pictures about, closed gates. I saw open courtyard, and so that's going to cause problems down the future because of the neighborhood. And since I do know the neighborhood, and I've been in it for X amount of years, so this is maybe a great plan, but I don't see where it's going to be feasible, say 5-10 years if this was to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Are there any other comments?
Yes, we have DG Bowler. Go ahead, Ms. Bowler.
Thank you. I had, I think, 3 comments to make. One is about removing trees because they threaten the power lines. I remember when I lived on, well, it doesn't matter where I lived, the wires were undergrounded. The city just chose to put them underground. And that could be done here in order not to have to take out trees. Also, I don't know how the decisions are made as to what new trees to plant. I should think it would be decided by more people in order to meet their concerns. For example, the trees that have been replaced at the main library are deciduous trees, and there are reasons not to have trees there that are going to be dropping their leaves. And I presume that a citizens group or some other or persons, not just one, would put their heads together and choose replacement trees agreeable to everybody. And then I just want to register my shock that what the sin of the tree number 12 is that it's in the way of a crane in order to do the construction. And I would hope that the human equipment should be more adaptable than that in order to respect our life. And with that, I guess, thank you for letting me speak and for carefully considering this matter.
Thank you.
Are there any other that will wish to speak on this matter?
I don't see any other hands at this time, Ms. Harris.
Okay, are there any public comments on any items on the agenda?
No hands, or that it should be for persons who have not had a chance to speak tonight.
Oh, yes, okay.
Hmm.
So, with that, if there are no more public comments, I am closing this hearing. This hearing is now closed at 7:31. Thank you.
Thank you all.